Hi, today I'm going to show you how to make your own sidewalk chalk. This sidewalk chalk recipe only uses a few ingredients. It uses plaster of Paris, some tempera paint, some hot water, and then something to make your chalk in. I'm going to use little paper cups today as my chalk mold, but you could also use a silicone mold or something else that you have around. And at the end, you're going to end up with a nice little chunk of sidewalk chalk, shaped exactly like whatever you put it in. So, how do you do this? Our recipe, right, uses the plaster of Paris, the water, and the ratio. These are the key ingredients, right? And the ratio between them is 1 part water to 2 parts plaster of Paris. And I've told you I was going to use these little paper cups as my mold. And I'm also going to use a paper cup to mix my solution, because that's the first step. We're going to mix the solution. So I have my plaster of Paris. I'm going to open this up and scoop in 3 tablespoons. I'm going to go with 3 tablespoons. So if it's 2 parts plaster of Paris and 1 part water, and I have 3 tablespoons for my plaster of Paris, how much water would I need to put in there? What's half of 3? It's a little tricky because you have to divide one of your whole numbers, right? Half of 3 is 1.5. So I've got my hot water here. I'm going to go ahead and put my 1.5 tablespoons of hot water on my plaster of Paris. And if I wanted to, I could go ahead and put the paint in too, but I'm going to wait until I mix this first. So I've got 1.5 tablespoons of water on 3 tablespoons of plaster of Paris. And now I'm going to use this craft stick to mix it up really well. And you want it to really mix in well. At the beginning, it's going to look a little bit like some of the stuff on top won't mix in, but if you keep going, you can get it all mixed in. So it's a pretty even consistency of this, almost like a thick putty. And that's just the plaster of Paris by itself. Now we're going to put in the color, and I'm going to use this purple color. And for color, it depends, right? However much color you put in is going to affect how bright and intense this sidewalk chalk is. I want mine to be pretty intense, kind of like how I made this pink one. So I'm going to use 2 scoops. Sorry, that's not a measurement. By scoops there, I mean teaspoons. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of this paint. So I've got 2 teaspoons of purple paint right on top. Now I'm going to mix that in to the paste there. Wow, it's really mixing in pretty nicely. And I want to mix that as well as I can into the mixture, into that plaster of Paris that I've already created. Mix that up. It's really mushy. It's very, very creamy, as you can see. Okay, now I've got that mixed up. I'm using this paper cup, so I'm being very careful not to push through too hard because I don't want to break it. Okay, now I've got this solution mixed up. I don't want to let it dry in this cup because it looks like a big mess right now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to scrape these edges off, is put it into a clean cup by itself. So I'm going to put it right into this clean cup. I'm seeing a little bit of white spots where I didn't mix it all away. And that's okay. It'll just mean my chalk has a little bit of a swirl to it. And there we go. Now I'm going to make sure it sets in there pretty nicely. I'm just going to poke it down a little bit, just because this one's a little thicker. You can also drop your mold on the table like this to get it to sink down. And then at the very end, you want to take a wet paper towel and wipe all the way around it, just to kind of clean those edges up on the walls of that mold. If you don't get it all, that's okay. I like to clean it up as much as I can. All right, so there I've got my chalk in its cup, and I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to let it dry overnight for at least 24 hours. just so it has a chance to fully harden. When it has fully hardened, you're going to come back to your cup. It's going to look something like this, except this one's a smaller piece of chalk that I created. When it's done, if you've got it in a paper cup, what you're going to do is just rip the paper cup right off. It's going to come pretty smoothly off all the way around, except you might have this problem on the bottom, which is what I've been running into. And with that, what I do is just rub my thumb across it, and that balls the paper up and gets it off the bottom of my chalk. So I'm just going to rub that all the way around to get the paper off. And you can see little bitty flecks are breaking off. Those are those edges all the way around. So I've wiped down as much as I could, but there's still some in there, and when this one dries, we'll have some of those small flakes as well, and that's okay. And now my little piece of chalk is ready to go. You can see both of these pieces were pink. The only difference between them is that in this one, I used more of that tempera paint than on this one. So on this one, I got a more intense pink red color. On this one, with less paint, right, it ended up more as a pastel. So you can play around with this a little bit, or you can decide that you don't want any color, and that's okay, because then if you don't put any color in, right, your chalk is going to end up white. So that is how you make some sidewalk chalk with just plaster of Paris, some tempera paint, some hot water. I hope that you enjoyed this and have a lot of fun creating your own chalk, and then also, of course, a lot of fun using your chalk.